on, baby.
Okay,
We're on, baby.
Okay.
This is it. This is it. She lots of laughing, a lot of hugs, a lot of stuff. My guest today is Ashley Burnett. And Ashley, the very first time I met you was at the Fuzzy Bubbler. And there was a club soccer meeting going on. And you were with some friends, maybe, not really sure. But you were there, which is Fuzzy Bubbler's right there. I'm pointing at it. It's right behind us here.
Yep.
In Jail Alley, behind the promenade. Well, Fuzzy Bubbler's part of the promenade. But I don't remember the whole night because I was 17 IPAs in. Yeah. But I remember you were very nice, very smart, very intelligent. And then we bumped into each other a couple times. And then it dawned on me that you have this, I feel like you're very humble. So you may not want to accept all of my compliments, but you have a following and kind of an energy. And you do, not only do you provide very good, calming advice, nice sentiments to people, but you do a lot of fun stuff too.
I try.
Yeah. So what are you doing in Chicago? You either did some kind of event or you're about to have some kind of event where you're bringing people.
Well, I can actually speak to that. I actually canceled that.
You did?
I canceled that event. Yeah, this segues beautifully into what we're talking about today because I've been leading retreats for a long time. Like I've led over 100 retreats, and I was going to do a retreat in Chicago. And I just kept getting closer to the retreat, and something intuitively was telling me kind of like, nope. Kept coming up against like these roadblocks of like, this does not feel aligned for me to do.
Okay.
And it was at that moment that I had just neared the year mark of moving here. So just moved from the San Francisco Bay Area back to my hometown. I was out there for 18 years, been away from here for 25 years, moved here, was getting up to that year mark. It was a big transition for me to go from there to here, kind of as a new person coming home. Dad has Parkinson's, all these things. And things were just not feeling in alignment. And I had to pause and stop and ask myself, like, what do I really want to be doing here? How do I really want to be of service? This retreat that I have planned right now doesn't feel right, And so I literally called it a couple weeks before it was going to happen and decided, you know what? I'm going to go inward. I'm going to ask for direction. I'm going to get clarity around where am I supposed to be, being of service right now. And I got clarity. So, that was the reason why you even asked me on this podcast. So I feel like this is one of
the reason why. So did you do an event on the promenade over in that event space it was right next to one of my spaces or Brandon Van Camp's spaces.
Yeah.
In that event.
So I had led the retreat and then came over to the Bubbler right after to kind of let loose a little bit, have a drink. And then
tell me about that.
That's when we met.
Tell me about that retreat. The one that when we met at the Bubbler, you came from
the Replenish retreat.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So that retreat, I actually launched for the very first time in San Francisco 10 years ago as an opportunity for women in business to come together to give back to themselves, prioritize their self-care, because so many women, especially solopreneurs, feel isolated. They're working for themselves. They feel isolated. They don't, at least when I was starting, I was working 12-plus hour days, staying up, working 7 days a week, trying to hustle, get my business going. And I reached burnout, and so that retreat was the answer to that. And that was like, 110 retreats ago, kind of a thing.
You've done that many.
Yeah. I've led. Yeah. And I mean, that's me counting like half-day retreats and, multi-day retreats and that sort of thing. But it's just an opportunity to pause, to give back to ourselves as busy working women, moms, entrepreneurs. And these retreats that I'm doing now here in Quincy, which I do have one coming up on December 5th. But those are not just for entrepreneurs now. So I kind of shifted gears to, wanting to support women that are, stay-at-home mothers and they're working hard, they're working probably harder than I am as an entrepreneur, So I think there's a lot of just giving back, replenishing, and having this moment to like pause, sit down, think about what is it that I want? How do I want to, what are my goals and wishes and dreams as someone who's giving all the time,
When you were living in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
So is it just like kind of outside of San Francisco?
10 years in SF proper, like in the heart of the city.
Oh my
I
gosh.
lived 10 years in the city, and then I moved to Petaluma, California, which is in Sonoma County, out in the country, about this similar size to Quincy, and kind of has a lot of similar kind of rural feelings.
What's the name of the city?
Petaluma, California.
Petaluma. Okay.
Beautiful town. Love it.
And that's so. I'm trying to picture the geography of California. Is that where is that in relationship to San Francisco?
Hour north.
Hour north.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you were in the city in San Fran
For 10 years.
for 10 years, and then you moved to Petaluma.
Mm-hmm.
And then where from Petaluma?
Here.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was 8.5 years in Petaluma.
Okay. What's with the 773 area code?
Oh, I was in Chicago before that. So I moved from Chicago to San Francisco.
Oh my gosh. How long were you in Chicago?
3 years.
Okay. Did you enjoy the Chicago experience?
At that time in my life, I was in my early 20s, and I was just an angry girl,
Okay.
I just
Okay.
had a lot of well, if we're coming to this book
Oh,
that you have right here,
Oh yeah, we're gonna come to this.
anxiety ridden. I was battling severe anxiety at that time in my life, and just feeling like wanting to have control and not being able to have control, coming to terms with that. And I was not a happy person. I was severely aerophobic. I was
What's that?
so aerophobia, afraid to fly.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you this story because
Please.
it's all about this book, which I don't know if you want to.
The Power of Now.
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. Yeah. Which both of you or both of us have read this book.
Yes.
I read this when it.
Multiple times, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but we're not here to plug a book.
We're not here to plug a book.
But this is something that we have. Everybody's got stuff in common.
Yeah.
And you and I have some things in common. And this is one thing that I have massive gravity towards this. So
Yep.
this is kind of how I want to hear your story, but because I don't know this about you, so I want to hear this.
Thank you. Well, so Chicago, angry, whatever. And then I got clarity. Okay, I want to move to, and all these moves. Because I know one of the reasons you asked me was like, how do you know when, to do something intuitively? Like, how do you trust your own intuition on getting clarity of like maybe your purpose in life or a next step in life or something like that? Well, I've had that many different times with moves specifically. But yeah, it was like I moved into San Francisco. I called my boyfriend up. I'm like, we're moving to San Francisco. And he's like, no, we're not. And within 10 minutes, I'm like, meet me at this cafe. Within 10 minutes, we decided we were going to move there together. So,
Wow.
So we got out there, and I, 2 days later, went into massage school. So I was a massage therapist for 10 years, which funded my professional dance career at that time. But and
You were a professional dancer?
I was a professional dancer for, yeah.
Oh
yes.
my gosh.
We'll circle back to that. But in terms of, I'm trying to stay on track. So we had to do this little ritual or, kind of activity the first day I walk into this massage school. And we are going to karate chop a board Daniel-san style. Okay? And you're thinking, is this the right ritual to do for people that are learning massage and body work to use their hands forever, right? To use their hands for their career. And this is what we did. And so we had to write on the front of the board what we wanted to break through, and on the back of the board what we wanted to break through to. And so on the front of the board I wrote anxiety, because I'm telling you, my
Panic attacks?
my college sweetheart, his entire family is from Mexico, and he we were gonna go to Mexico, and I was like, no, we're driving there. Like, this is 2005 or 4 or something like that. I'm like, I was so terrified to get on that plane. We did end up flying there, so but I was terrified the whole time. Well, when I moved to California, I was like, I can't do this. I cannot. If I'm going to come back here and see my dad, I am not going to be terrified every single time that I'm doing this. So someone handed me that book. Anyway, karate chop, I do that whole thing. It was super powerful. I had the board in the back trunk of my car the entire time I lived in San Francisco. It felt really powerful to do that ritual. And then someone handed me that book. I read that book, and it completely changed my life and wiped away my phobia of flying. And, it's not because it's, he didn't do it. It was the words that I absorbed in my, my inner state of transforming my fear into an understanding that I don't have control over this moment. I need to be in the present moment, and me being on an airplane and being scared the whole time is not going to, I have no control over that. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
I mean, I have control over whether or not I release that fear or not. It was
well, you
super
have
powerful.
Maybe, yeah, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but maybe you have no control over whether or not the plane crashes.
Yeah.
But you have control over whether or not you are going to let it disrupt your life.
Right.
In that moment.
Yep.
So, have you ever heard of general anxiety disorder? Feel free. Grab a drink. GAD. Okay. I think this made it to the DSM-5. The medical, the big, huge, thick medical book, whatever that thing is, the DSM-5. Diagnostical Statistical Manual, Revision 5. There's something in there where there's millions and millions of, let's talk about Americans for a minute. I don't want to drag the Europeans or the people in Latin America into this, but let's talk about Americans. Okay. There are millions of Americans that have this tightening of the chest. They're sitting there. They don't feel good.
Yeah.
There's something wrong. There's a disconnect, or we were talking about wiring kind of in the green room earlier about how you can wire somebody, or how you can allow yourself to be wired. Mm-hmm. Talk about like how my daughter, she's doing jujitsu. Like, okay, so she's kind of an assassin. Like, how do we want to like leverage her killer instinct to have confidence in all of these things? Mm-hmm. So I got diagnosed with GAD.
Okay.
And I don't know. I like to claim that I cured it, but I had to read this, and I had to read everything I get my hands on to settle down. But back to this idea of, I don't think you and I are the only ones that have. Can I use the term suffer?
Oh yeah,
like it's
we are suffering. People are suffering. Yeah,
suffering.
Absolutely.
So I know I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have an MD after my name, but I don't need one. I don't need those credentials to understand certain things that are kind of I don't want to say common sense. I don't know if I believe in common sense. It's like if I didn't teach my children to look both ways before crossing the street, they may have figured it out. But it would be better for me to give them the common sense to learn. So back to this idea of self-healing, the way that the body can self-heal. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're teaching this in school. I don't think they are, but that would be awesome if they did. I don't know if all of the parents are teaching all of their children these exercises and these ideas. I don't know. But again, this is not the Ashley and Frank book club about the power of now.
Right.
And I will read an excerpt from there. Have you ever listened to the audio version of this book?
I haven't listened. Well,
his voice is unbelievable.
I don't know, but I listen to his podcast all the time.
No, that's what I'm talking. Yeah. Okay, then you've heard his voice.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah.
Did I write you about that? About the Eckhart Tolle voice?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know. Yeah. Okay, I don't have to tell you, But this is a really neat thing about the people who have general anxiety disorder. most people, so 95% who have anxiety disorders don't know they do. They don't know. It's kind of like, how many people know the parts per billion amount of lead in their water? Nobody knows. You have to test. You have to like go through all of this thing. So long story short is I had that for a long time, and I tried really hard. Didn't know it.
Right.
Then a very smart doctor wrote it. You know what he did? He didn't even tell me that I had it. I was reading over. He goes, make sure you read your notes, like my notes for you when you get home. Don't do it in the car. Just get somewhere. And he wrote just like 2 or 3 things. He told me to look up general anxiety disorder. So I did. I'm like, yeah, that's what I got. He goes, also, not only is it treatable, but it's curable. And I bet you could do this for yourself soon. A doctor wrote, a primary physician.
Nice.
A DO, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did acupuncture, and I did chiropractic. I did holistic.
They don't have acupuncture here, do they?
No.
No. So this was like when you lived.
Well, this is in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was a mess. What's with Chicago? People move to Chicago being angry. I wasn't angry. I was fearful. So you were angry. I was fearful. 2 emotions that need to be kind of like, circumvented somehow.
Yeah. And I think I also was experiencing a lot of fear too, because I didn't know, who I was. I was young. Anyway, all sorts of stuff. Not gonna.
Yoda. He's got a quote about fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate. The Yoda-isms. That's true though. I don't know if you like Star Wars or not.
Of course.
You do? You like Star Wars?
Yeah.
That's 2 things.
And Yoda's my favorite.
Oh really?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. He's my favorite Jedi.
Yeah.
As well. So
not surprising if we're, he kind of sounds a little bit Yoda-ish.
He totally does. Anybody who's listening or watching, whatever, when you get a second, when you finish cooking tonight or you pull the car over, go to YouTube and just look up, or go to Spotify and just look up Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Eckhart is Eckhart. Tolle is Tolle. Just Google that and listen to this guy's voice. Unbelievable. Anyway, so can I tell you what I did today? I went to the interwebs, and like a creeper, I went to your Facebook page.
Oh, boy.
And I copied. I'm not going to read this whole thing. You wrote something very beautiful.
Thank
and
you.
I think this is, can I read I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Read whatever you feel compelled to read.
You know what? I should do this, in not the Eckhart Tolle voice. I should read. Will you just read?
No, I don't want to read it. You read it.
This is Ashley Burnett's Facebook post. And lots of people read this, I know, because you have thousands and thousands of followers. Hey, friends. I'm sending y'all so much love and compassion for the intensity of the big moment we find ourselves in right now. I honor the range of emotions that may be coming up for each of you. These are unparalleled times. Things are indeed shifting, and it's a lot to navigate. More than anything, I believe what is being asked of us right now is to take full ownership and ample care of ourselves as individuals, so that we can show up with authenticity and lead our lives in the most grounded way possible moving forward. That is fantastic. You go on to say you give examples about how to do this. Now, like, for example, you say things like, give yourself space to regulate your nervous system. That is brilliant. People do not understand this. The way that you speak and write, and I'm acting like, you and I talk about this all the time, but I know. Listen, you say things like, from a space of release, practice shifting your attention from what it is that you don't want, and focus on the now, the exact space that you're in at this literal present moment. Which, by the way, this is pages
right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I was very impressed with that enough that I copied
Thank
it,
you.
printed it. So, now if you get like 500 requests to be friends with you on Facebook, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to do that. So we got a few more things to talk about, and sometimes people don't listen to entire podcasts because they got to click off and do something. But What is a good way for somebody to get a hold of you on the interwebs? Or what's the best way if they want to join a future retreat, or just kind of, is it best, do you have a web page, or is it best to try to, do you post it? Yeah, tell me, please.
Yeah. They can go to ashleyburnett.co. So it's not .com. ashleyburnett.co. And I think for me, part of that was like collective, community, company, the working together idea. But yeah, they can go to ashleyburnett.co and find out more if they specifically wanted to go to a replenish retreat, which I've been doing both here in Quincy, and I have got one next week in California. I'm excited to go back and lead that. ashleyburnett.co/replenish. And then the other thing that I've primarily worked with women entrepreneurs, women in leadership roles, busy working women, and supporting them both on that holistic, wellness path. So I'm trained as a certified health coach, turned business coach, which part of that was, my mother owned a dance studio downtown for, 25 years or something like that.
What was it called?
Burnett Dance Center.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
that's not a small thing.
No, it was a huge thing. Yeah, it was big. And then her mom.
Did you dance in her studio?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
I mean, it sounds like I'm asking dumb questions, but I'm trying to figure out how you became a professional dancer.
Yeah. I grew up dancing under the direction of her. My dad was the theater director at the high school. And so kind of grew up in this creative family, and my lens of the world was from this kind of entrepreneurial lens, because my mother's mom, every time I think about it, it just makes me sad. But her first husband died 2 days before her first child was born. So that, set her into labor, and there she was kind of in the 40s going, what am I going to do? And
It set her into labor?
Well, yeah.
The grief of it?
Yeah. And then she decided to go to optometry school. So she was taking the train from Joliet to Chicago every day so that she could reopen her late husband's practice. And she was one of the first female optometrists in the Chicagoland area, one of the first to fit for contact lenses in the U.S., females to fit for contact lenses. And then her other daughter, my Aunt Georgia, was also an entrepreneur. So I kind of come from this like long lineage of women entrepreneurs, and the work kind of transformed into from that total wellness focus to business and leadership. But I'm bringing it back right now into this wellness space, because I just feel like more than anything, if we don't have the energy, and I'm 44, I'm not shy to say how old I am right now, so I'm in that midlife moment, and in this, so I created an online course for women going through their midlife awakening, if you want to call it, to like look at, who am I now from this place? How do I want to care for my body? How can I appreciate my changing body from the place that I'm in now? Feel strong, grounded, healthy. And I'll tell you, honestly, I feel stronger and healthier, more energetic than I did in my 20s now, right? So I created a course that I'm launching right now. So if anyone's interested in that, they can go to ashleyburnett.com/radiance and learn more about that.
ashleyburnett.co.
Wait, ashleyburnett.co/radiant.
Got it.
Not radiance. Radiant. But those are the ways to contact me. And people can email me too if they want to ask me a question.
That's that's so interesting. So do you feel, I see what you're doing. So that's really, okay. Yeah. You're really striking a chord with me in a really good way. So this idea of when you want to start something like a new business, and I have started new businesses that have failed. I don't know if that makes me a failure or not, but I've started businesses.
There's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Ooh, good.
That was a quote from my first business coaches, and that will never leave me. It's not failure, it's feedback on, what went right, what went wrong, what was aligned, what was not. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you're talking about is you're kind of talking about looking at the foundation and before, like for example, like before a woman decides to build her own business, if she's on rocky footing, like if she thinks she's on rocky footing, or maybe she's really trying to juggle all of these things, she's juggling all of the things in her life, and she's trying to get this done. You're taking a look at it and say, you know what, let's just kind of build, let's take a step back and let's secure this foundation before you IPO this thing or before you even get any further.
Absolutely.
Because the person, you use the term solopreneur, which I think is a really good term. Because so like the person who is trying to build a business, and which by the way, you're not just talking about people trying to build businesses. You're talking about any person that's not in the right space.
Absolutely.
They have to do certain things. How important do you think it is? And this sounds like another dumb, like leading question, but I really want to hear your perspective on it. Given the fact that, we're flying around on this rock and it's spinning around and the planet's spinning around, and then the planet itself is moving super fast through space, and then it's moving around the sun very quickly, and the sun is moving. So, some people think that here's the sun and it's just doing this. What's actually doing is the sun's going this way and it's dragging all the planets in like a corkscrew way through this, not through the solar system, but through space, right? Okay.
It's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. What's my point? My point is, what's more important? You living in the moment, or always searching for money and value out here, out of your reach? Right. How do you get those things? I mean, how spiritual is money? How spiritual is currency? What is currency? Because it's not all about money and dollars.
Yeah.
There's spiritual
and right
currency.
now it's like most of it is not in a physical, tangible. It's not. It is energy, right? It's like
it's
basically
energy.
an energetic exchange is what it is.
Yeah, and like every exchange between two people, even if it's like a positive one, is some type of exchange of energy. And when it goes awry, it's still an exchange of energy, but maybe turns into power struggle. Have you I like to use examples of like, ever been in like a texting battle with someone you love? Have you ever like been like, oh yeah, well I think that's wrong. Or
I try not to do that, but
I mean, when texting first came out,
yeah, right,
or like
right.
years ago, back before you had it figured out,
right?
Or like things like, I think you're probably the kind of person who's very good at disarming a problem between you and somebody else. You're probably
I try
quicker to get to the place where everybody should be before the other person.
I mean, I am a double fire. Yeah, I got some fire in me, but I try to keep the peace too.
Are you double fire?
Oh yeah.
You are?
Yeah, Aries and Sag. So.
Wait, like
Aries
cusp?
sun and Sag moon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I got a lot of fire energy. But that being said, I got the Taurus grounding, earthy. That's probably the peacekeeper that likes to come out. So
yeah, before we get into astrology,
and I'm not into astrology a ton, but I do know those three signs, and like, you know, that's about it.
You're not pulling everything from astrology here. You're just saying, no matter what, if astrology is real or not, no matter what, you have to be grounded and live in the moment.
Yeah.
No matter what, the power of now is the most important thing we have.
Absolutely.
So the astrological piece is always kind of a
that, and like start with what you can control, which is yourself, your inner state, how you care for yourself. That's going to affect everything else that happens in your life. That's going to affect how you show up in business, but also even getting those business ideas quickly. Like that was one of the things I was going to say around like, when do I get hits of inspiration or intuition? It's always when I'm quiet, I'm sitting down, I'm either, meditating, or I'm in the bath, or I'm, on a hike in nature, or I've just done like some movement practice where I'm not thinking. And I think it's when we overthink and we overdo that we lose that connection to, clarity of like what our next steps are in life, business, all the things, right?
You mentioned the bath. So, so driving with no music on, no podcasts on, does it for me. Mm-hmm. I'm just driving.
Yep.
Like nothing else is happening. I just kind of let my mind go. Mm-hmm. In the bath, like showers, there's something very interesting about. Sometimes I'm a shower before bed, or a shower after I wake up kind of a person. Mm-hmm. But my day is better if I shower in the morning. But then, of course, my wife says, "Don't get into these clean sheets without showering." So then, I'm like, God dang, I need to shower twice. What a waste of time. No, but like there's something about being in the shower, the bath, what you're saying, or that just can spark something. There's something about kind of going to zero, mm-hmm. kind of going to, and I think you can see this mathematically too. I took calculus 3 times. I withdrew, failed it one time. I was failing it, so I withdrew, like just the perfect timing. I was going to Illinois State, and this is really embarrassing, but then I took it a second time because I had to take calculus. It wasn't even like real calculus. It was like calculus for business. But I really struggled with it, And I took it a second time, and I was passing it, but I was very anxious, and I got scared. So I withdrew passing it.
Oh, wow.
And the third time I passed it, and I barely got a C. But the point is, in calculus, they talk about limits and how, like, asymptotes and, like, I'm not trying to be a nerd, but when you've got, like, XY axes and you're drawing parabolas, and when the line comes down, it never can touch zero. In calculus, the line
Math
coming
is
down.
Like not my forte.
I'm just telling you right now,
yeah.
like this is like a metaphysical thing. Okay,
yeah.
This is a spiritual thing.
Okay.
Where, like in math, I believe that mathematics is a language of the universe. I think it's one of the languages.
Yeah.
I think physics is up there too, and I think if more and more people took the people that don't like organized religion, if they were able to, the people that do like it, if they were able to take organized religion, which I'm not for or against it, but there's some massive tools that you can use, mm-hmm. At least to keep the masses in line, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can take some of those things and apply them to math and science and physics and quantum physics, you start to see that there probably is some type of system that you can anchor onto.
Right. Yeah.
And so I don't care if you're pagan or like if you're a witch or you're like a priest or a priestess, like there are people that know how to wield these powers. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about magic, although magic's interesting. But even if you're just talking about like people who are Catholic that go and worship a god, or Muslims who go and worship a god. The people who are not worshiping those gods, they're worshiping something else that's maybe like nature. Power can be wielded through meditation or a yearning or a desire or a call out into the wilderness. Some people call that prayer. Mm-hmm. Or if you look in the mirror and you say 100 times, I will not be scared of flying this plane. I will not be scared of flying this plane. I will not be scared of flying this plane. Maybe that's better than not trying. Maybe, I'm using you as an example, which is reaching, but for me, the way that I got over my anxiety was through like enormous amounts of begging for help. I begged the universe for a solution. Mm. Begged. Mm-hmm. Like whatever the system is that's making all this stuff work.
Right.
Please help me. Like I was on my knees. And so,
and
that some people call that worship, but I look at it more like, I'm not a worship guy so much as I'm oh, please, I don't know how this works. Please, like the creator, or if this is a simulation, then I'm going to ask the programmer. Yeah. Who's the programmer? Like, who's doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how do I root into the earth?
Right.
Like taking off your shoes and feeling dirt, or the feeling like going on a beach. And there's a big difference between walking on the beach with shoes on and walking on the beach with no shoes on. Mm-hmm. Do you think that too? Do you think there's like, rooting down,
absolutely,
or like a certain kind of a yoga pose?
There's that we could go off on another tangent. You can Google earthing, and look up all the health benefits to that. I'm not an expert, but yeah, when we're connected, we are a part of nature. When we take off our shoes and we put them down onto like earth or sand or water or whatever it is, we're gonna have a different energetic experience than when we're just wearing shoes,
I totally think that.
Yeah. And talk about nervous system regulation practices, and what does that even mean? That's just like stress reduction. How can we reduce our levels of stress, our cortisol levels, all that kind of stuff, which when we do that, we can have a deeper connection with the divine, and we can get those downloads or directions on where we're supposed to go next that much quicker, right? I mean, I've had like very clear directions on, moving to Petaluma was probably one of the biggest ones that I've ever had. But then I also struggled when I was like, but that was it. It was just 8.5 years. Like now, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you're being called to other places, to other things, right? But when we regulate our nervous system, when we release the cortisol levels and we get into a place of stillness and quiet, that's when we can connect. Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about when we release the thinking mind. So, prayer serves a purpose, but when we're praying, we're still thinking, right? We're sending our prayers to something. We're asking for something, asking for help. When we get quiet, and we're not thinking, that's oftentimes when I will get kind of those inspirational hits and things like that.
It goes, I was tying that, what you just said, tying to go to zero. Like mathematically,
right.
You mathematically in calculus, which is one of the higher forms of math that, by the way, I don't want anyone to think I'm smart about calculus because I just told you that I barely got a C.
The third time.
So, I'm not bragging here. But when that line comes down, you think you're at zero, it never touches zero.
Right.
It's almost like us humans, the goal is to get as close to zero as you can. And I don't know. I'm gonna ask you two things. One is, do you believe getting down to zero is when you've cleared the field to allow signal? And secondly, do you think a human can get to absolute zero?
Is that enlightenment? Are we talking about that? Yeah, I would say that very few of us could get to that place.
It's possible.
I think it is potentially possible.
Yeah, me
but
too.
Yeah, I don't. I think there are few humans that can reach that point.
Maybe a handful.
Yeah.
Maybe a handful of people have done it. Out of the 10, 12, 14 billion people on the planet that ever lived, maybe I know there's
the enlightened masters. That's basically what,
Yeah. I mean, there are, maybe those, those monks that live up in the Himalayas.
Right.
They live to 120 years old.
Right.
They haven't eaten in 20 years.
Yeah. Maybe they have. I don't know.
Maybe they have. But they're very quiet when they come down. They don't, when they're found, like those cave hikers, they will not say anything.
Oh yeah.
And there's no way they could have eaten I mean, there's people talk about like the religion of Christianity, which is not like a Tibetan monk. It's different, right? Mm-hmm. It's Western as opposed to Eastern, which is very, very interesting way to marry Eastern and Western religions. I think is fascinating.
But there are a lot of parallels too, right?
A ton of parallels.
Yeah.
And like you can go in when you're uncovering all the pyramids in different places and so wait a second, how there weren't even people in this? How could this happen? How are the pyramids at that coordinate? Wait a minute, what is going on? And then you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's when we start getting mind blown, and then we're like,
Yeah, but it's really neat. Like for example, like around here, there's a lot of Christians in Quincy, not a lot of Tibetan monks.
No.
So they're less geared and wired for Tibetan monk behavior than they are with, quote unquote Christian behavior. But one of the things that in one of the ancient texts, they talk about this man who supposedly, allegedly, and I think it's possible, that a man went out into the desert and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Mm-hmm. And then when that person came back, he was changed. He didn't even look like himself. I mean, there's another time where they go up into a mountain shortly thereafter, and they see him, but it doesn't look like him anymore. And that goes to this idea of when you go to zero, or you create such an environment where you have so much divine signal coming in, like you won't even allow food to interrupt this. You won't even let your digestive system interrupt the signal.
Right.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And I think the question becomes like, yeah, maybe more people could reach that moment at a moment in their lives, but how do you maintain that with consistency? You know, that's where I think it's very few people that have been able to do that.
Well, it's like if you ever watch a movie and you're in the movie theater and something just grabs you where you're like, oh, like, okay, how do you stay suspended in that state of being where you're at the top? It's like, you know, or witnessing the birth of a child. From like my perspective, when I saw the birth of my first child, it was very exhilarating, and then but it's an ebb and flow. Mm-hmm. This how do you hang on to the enlightenment? Mm-hmm. I think what probably is happening is humans today have very small glimpses,
right,
like nanoseconds, of enlightenment. Mm-hmm. But how hard is it to string together like 10 seconds of it, mm-hmm. or 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. Which I've heard is an eternity.
Right.
When you're really in that state. I went to I don't know if I should say this because my mother might be listening, but she hasn't really been listening to very many of my podcasts lately. So Mom, you need to get better here. But I did a sweat tent thing with the shaman. Mm-hmm. And it was very warm in there. We were just sweating.
I've done one, and I did not make it very far.
Yeah,
personally.
I had a really, really hard time breaking through. It didn't help that maybe I had some peyote button mushrooms too. That didn't really help. Actually, it really helped, if you know what I mean. That was really great. But I did, without going into too much detail, I really could feel myself going into that divine. And I'm definitely a better person for it. You know, I remember coming out of it. It was that and a series of kind of a few other psychedelic things that I did for the sake of spirit, mm-hmm. and not for the sake of recreation. Mm-hmm. I did for myself. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I was curious, and I wanted to examine that part of the world. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, have you ever seen The Lord of the Rings? Mm-hmm. You know, when Frodo puts the ring on, that's where I went.
Right.
I mean, no one can see me. Like, I am in the nether regions, but I'm right there. But like, also, like, I'm in a different place.
Realm. Yeah,
I'm a different realm.
Different realm.
As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that cured my stutter.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm pretty
really?
sure. Yeah.
Cool.
And I also think it actually got me into a really good place where I actually a long time after that, I got myself into some bad situations, some bad decision making, where I got that anxiety back, and then I had to fight back. I'm like, wait a second, no, Frank, you know how to fix this. You've done this before. And then I'm looking in the mirror. I'm looking in the proverbial mirror. I'm like, yeah, would you keep on doing mushrooms every single time to get through, like break through? It's like,
right. No. Yeah.
No. And then people talk about, there's things that you could do, like take some, what's the ecstasy? What's the help me out here? What's the Aspen? Can you Google this? What's Aspen? Google. What is ecstasy made out of?
It's
once she's finding that, it's so there are certain kinds of drugs. It's like kind of this. When you break your arm or you break your leg and you have to walk and use, it starts with an M.
Molly?
Yeah, it's Molly. Is it
no,
is it MDMA?
It's referred to by Molly and also MDMA.
MDMA.
And it stands for methyl N-dioxymethamphetamine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
But yeah, so that's like when you break your leg, if you need crutches are temporary, but it's a tool that you use to get to where you want to go.
Right.
And sometimes people, I'm not advocating it's like some type of like massive drug use thing.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying like some people to take care of
might explore. Yeah. Might try it to I don't know. What are you saying? I'm not.
Well, what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to say that people should do drugs
No.
to fix themselves.
Yeah.
I'm saying there are things that can be done in maybe extreme circumstances. I'm just going to come out and say it. Listen, I've done mushrooms. Okay. If the feds are listening, I'm sorry. Don't try to take away my guns. I'm sorry. Yeah, I've done it. It was fantastic. I don't regret it. One time I was in Bloomington Normal. I was in college, for crying out loud. I'm not even going to tell you all the things I did. I'll tell you a couple things. But seriously, if my mother's hearing this, she's going to start crying because she doesn't want that to be the case. But anyway, I'm okay, Mom. Everything.
I turned out all right.
I gave you 3 beautiful grandkids. What else do you want? But so like I was walking down this trail, and it was around the 4th of July. It was like the middle of July, kind of, maybe after the 4th of July. And you know when the fireflies come out?
Yeah. I got to experience that again this year.
Then, so it looked like it was snowing light. It just felt like.
Oh, wow.
And then I would walk past a tree. Can I see your little canteen water bottle thing? You know when you're like walking down the street this way? If you keep on looking at the tree, I'll do it from your vantage point. If you're right here and you start walking this way, if you're looking at the tree, it almost looks like the tree kind of turns with you. It's not really actually turning. But the next time you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a tree, keep your eye on the tree. It's not just parallax. Part of it is parallax. Are you familiar with parallax? Parallax is like when you're looking, when you're riding in a car.
It looks like.
All the trees like a mile or two away look like they're going by very slowly.
Right.
But the trees closer to your car as you're traveling very quickly look like they're going by very quickly.
Yeah.
They're all going past at generally the same speed.
Yeah.
But one set of trees look like they're going by quickly. The other ones look like they're going by slowly. That's parallax.
Yep.
Well, anyway, when I was shrooming, the tree was turning like this and kind of like looking
Like
at me,
following
like,
you.
like
Or-
acknowledging,
yeah.
like I'm paying attention to the tree,
Yeah.
and the tree is paying attention to me.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I literally told the tree, I go, "Hey, I'm so glad you're here." So I don't want people to think I'm a druggie, but
No, but the trees have intelligence too.
The trees do have intelligence. So
Yeah.
what do you think? Thank you for that prop.
Absolutely.
What do you think somebody should do if they're having a panic attack? Do you have any advice for somebody having a panic attack?
Oh, geez.
Have you ever had a panic attack?
Yeah. Yes.
What would you do?
Yes.
What would you do?
Usually you let yourself go into that, and what you're doing is you're hyperventilating, right? You're breathing because the breath is going to regulate your nervous system, and unfortunately, you're going into this whole. It feels like you're losing control, and maybe you're crying or something like that. Well, various breathwork practices can help you. So if you have those tools, then you might avoid going into the panic attack. And I'm not saying, breathwork practices can also stir up a lot of emotion too. So I'm not going to say, go out and just try all these breathwork practices. But if you're working with a skilled practitioner or someone who knows what they're doing in terms of facilitating that, that can, again, regulate yourself to a place where maybe you're not going to go into full-blown panic attack. I think there's a lot of tools, like practical tools, like breathing with intention, right, or deeply, meditation. But in a panic attack situation, that's probably not the one I would go to.
I do have a question for Aspen. Aspen, can you find out how many Americans suffer from panic attacks? Is that something you can look up? Do you feel like, so do you know people who have had panic attacks?
Yeah.
Do you know more than one?
Yes.
Wait, do you know more than a handful?
Probably.
Okay. I know a dozen people.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah.
That have had a panic attack.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to this general anxiety disorder situation where this is something, and by the way, I think humans have probably always had some kind of panic attack, but what I think is and I don't know if the food is causing it or or media, or, you know, when you wrote those nice words about, I know everyone's having, like, some people are having a hard time right now. You didn't say everybody's having a hard time. You said there's probably some of you out there that are maybe having a hard time with current events or their lives or something that's happening. It's got to be an astounding number of people. I think people that have panic attacks and have anxiety, I think if they truly knew how normal they are. You know, have you ever heard this? It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take some issue with that while Aspen's finding that? Do you have anything yet, Aspen?
Yeah. Yeah. So every year, up to 11% of people in the United States experience a panic attack. This is from Cleveland Clinic, by the way. And then approximately 2 to 3% of people in the U.S. have panic disorder. And people that were assigned female at birth are 2 times more likely to have panic disorders than people assigned male at birth.
Oh my gosh. That 11%, that's actually higher. That's a little higher than what I thought. I did think it was going to be double
And that's
digits.
like from the
1 out of
studies,
10.
like probably more people.
Yeah,
have
there's
that
people
too.
that are going undiagnosed. I
Yeah.
mean, there are people that, for example, I know a good friend of mine that thought he was having a heart attack.
I do too.
He called the ambulance, and he was like, and he's like freaking out. He was like, I'm gonna die. And he went to the hospital. He went to the ER.
It's anxiety or a panic attack.
It was just a panic
Yeah.
attack.
No,
They
I've
can be so
heard of
strong.
that many times from people. Yeah, and I think it's a multi-pronged, pandemic of overworking, disconnection from nature, disconnection from divine, scrolling on all the screens. I mean, it's like numbing out, eating crappy food, like all the things. It's just a culmination of all of these things.
Do you have blue light glasses?
I used them for a long time. I
Yeah.
haven't been
Do you
using
think they
them.
work?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's some type of, I'm spending money. Amazon's getting so much of my money.
Right.
Because, my wife is like looking at the
Yeah.
phone. Do you think?
But I do think our screens are messing with our eyes
think-
for sure.
Aspen, do you look at your cell phone like right before bed?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
You
messes
do?
with the
For sure,
circadian rhythms.
yeah.
Do you think?
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Do you feel like? Do you feel like it affects your sleep, or do you think like intuitively, if you didn't do it, you would have a different outcome? And what do you think?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that, like, it's a fact that the blue light will absolutely disrupt your circadian rhythm. And also in the morning, first thing when you wake up, if you look at blue light before you look at sunlight, that also can throw you off for the entire day.
Oh, interesting.
Well, from my experience, if I'm on the device at night late, like let's say I'm finishing a work thing, I have to do that. Last night was one of them. And then it was way harder for me to get to sleep versus when I turn the screen off, I do my self-care, my meditation practice, or whatever it is before I'm going to bed, and I'm not on a screen for, I don't know, an hour before I go to bed or something like that. Can fall asleep like a baby right away,
Last question, because if you take a look at the time,
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna.
We're good.
You have to be home at a certain time, so
Yeah.
I want to give you that respect.
Got a
to
little
make sure-
5-year-old, got to go
Yes.
relieve the grandma.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
You have a 5-year-old? Mm-hmm. We both have 5-year-olds. What, in our closing parts of the pod here, what do you recommend for someone who generally just is struggling right now, or maybe has undiagnosed general anxiety disorder, or anybody that just, they wake up in the morning and they're almost like kind of dreading their day?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of advice do you have for that person?
Oh man, it's hard, but shifting the mindset. I mean, this is where you have to work, you have to practice. Like, we don't get good at, jiu-jitsu or soccer or any of these things without practicing, right? So all these other things like meditation or, gratitude practices, like that's why they call it a practice. So I would say a gratitude practice in terms of like, what do you have? What can you be in gratitude of? What can you be appreciative of? goes a long way. I think we just focus so much on everything that's bad, all the fear, everything. And again, coming into this present moment, is there something wrong specific? There might be something specifically wrong with this present moment that you're in, right? And then you're dealing with that in the moment. But most of the times it's either happened in the past or the future, or, we're thinking it will happen in the future. It never happens in the future. And that's where all the anxiety and depression and all these things come from, right? So it's like, can you be in a gratitude practice, and get that book, Power Now.
Ashley Burnett, thank you so much for coming on.
Such a pleasure.
You are so much fun to talk to. Aspen Gengenbacher, thank you for producing.
Thanks, Aspen.
Thank you so much. And till next time, see ya.
Okay, thanks, everyone.